the Diocese of Palm Beach, Florida. The story of the faith in this region began with the labors of Spanish missionary priests, was sustained and nurtured over the years by holy bishops, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Gerald Barbarito.
My motto is living the truth in love. The bishop has to proclaim the truth, but he has to do that in love.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. Situated on a long barrier island on the easternmost point of Florida's beautiful Atlantic coast is the city of Palm Beach, sea city of the Diocese of Palm Beach.
There are 7 dioceses in Florida. We have a great group of bishops. But we in Palm Beach, we have a very diverse population: Hispanic, Vietnamese, Filipino, Haitian, Creole, so large backgrounds of different people.
Palm Beach's history dates back to the Spanish colonization of St. Augustine in northern Florida, centuries before the American Revolution. In the mid-1500s, Spanish conquistadors secured a Spanish foothold in Florida. Florida at various times came under the rule of the Spanish and British crowns before becoming an American state in the early 1800s. In the early 1800s, Florida had been placed under the jurisdiction of the Diocese of Louisiana and the Floridas. And the bishop, Louis de Berg, actually never goes into the territory. It was seen as a undesirable frontier land, and he was worried about going into this unknown area. By 1850, in the United States, to give some context, there are 1,200 Catholic churches. There are only 5 in Florida. So it's this very sparse Catholic population.
In the mid-1800s, Augustin Verreau is appointed Vicar Apostolic of Florida, and this is a role to which he was very attentive and faithful, even after he was appointed in 1861 as the 3rd Bishop of Savannah. He would move back into Florida and work in the territory, making sure that everybody's spiritual needs were attended to. He would visit the most remote parts of Florida, traveling on horseback, visiting the scattered Catholic families and settlements, offering Mass. There are even stories of him sleeping outdoors as a bishop. He was so devoted to making sure that his people were taken care of. Finally, in 1870, Pope Pius IX establishes the Diocese of St. Augustine, the boundaries of which include all of Florida. Verreau becomes the first bishop, and in this diocese, we see a span of over 47,000 square miles.
And Catholicism in southern Florida didn't really develop until the early 20th century, bolstered by real estate development and tourism. In the region that's now the Diocese of Palm Beach, the Catholic presence really grew in the early 20th century in response to summer tourism. St. Anne's Church in West Palm Beach was built upon land that was donated by Henry Flagler, the great Florida real estate developer who had earlier earned his fortune with the Standard Oil Company. He used his wealth in order to invest in railroad development and tourism throughout the state of Florida. And the land that was donated for St. Anne's Church helped provide for the spiritual needs of many of the workers who helped build his hotels in Palm Beach. In Palm Beach, Catholics literally helped build the tourist economy through their labor in constructing some of the grand resort hotels of the region.
St. Anne's Church in West Palm Beach was one of the early centers of Catholic life in the Palm Beach region. It provided spiritual care for many of the workers who were drawn to Florida in order to provide labor needed for railroad development and construction. Now, today, St. Anne's remains a vibrant center of Catholic life in the region, now serving a new immigrant population that includes Hispanics, Haitian Creoles, Vietnamese, and others who are drawn to South Florida's economy and are reinvigorating the Catholic Church in South Florida.
I have seen the Hispanic population grow. It was large when I came here, but in the 16 years it really has grown, and the Hispanic population is a very alive and vibrant part of the diocese and of the church, and one that we're very grateful for.
Catholic sisters have played an important role in building up healthcare in South Florida. The Franciscan Sisters of Allegheny were invited to South Florida in 1927 to establish a hospital in the Diocese of Miami. In 1939, these sisters established St. Mary's Hospital in Palm Beach. They also took control of Pine Ridge Hospital, which served the African American population in the region during the days of segregation. In 1964, the Franciscan Sisters and St. Mary's Hospital became the first integrated hospital in South Florida. It was a bold move on their part, but a clear statement that their mission demanded that they challenge the color line and racial prejudice.
One of the important Catholic institutions in the Diocese of Palm Beach is St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary. It serves as the seminary for all of Florida, and it functions under a rather unique model. Even though it was originally established by the Archdiocese of Miami, St. Vincent de Paul Seminary serves as a regional seminary and is jointly owned by all 7 dioceses in the state of Florida. This cooperative model was unique at the time. Most other dioceses would have insisted on maintaining their own separate institutions, including seminaries. But as the Catholic Church was developing in Florida, the bishops realized that it was better to have a cooperative venture. And St. Vincent de Paul Seminary serves as not just the only seminary for the state of Florida, but the entire American Southeast.
St. Vincent de Paul is the only fully bilingual theological seminary in the United States.
Recognizing the need to minister to both the English-speaking and the Spanish-speaking population, that it is increasingly part of the vibrant diversity of the Church in the United States.
In 1984, Pope John Paul II creates the Diocese of Palm Beach, which was carved out of parts of the Archdiocese of Miami and the Diocese of Orlando. Pope John Paul II appoints Thomas Daly, who was an auxiliary bishop in his hometown of Boston, as the first bishop of Palm Beach. As Bishop of Palm Beach, Bishop Daly really does help to cultivate and grow the community and strengthen the parishes and the diocese, both economically and spiritually as well.
The diocese was established under the patronage of Our Lady, Queen of the Apostles. In searching for a cathedral for the new diocese, church leaders settled on centrally located St. Ignatius of Loyola. In the short 15 years leading up to the diocese founding, St. Ignatius Church had grown from a few dozen Catholics who initially met for Mass at a local school to an extraordinarily large parish with nearly 2,000 households. St. Ignatius was consecrated as the cathedral by Bishop Edward McCarthy of Miami in 1984.
The parish came into existence as a parish of St. Ignatius, as a parish of the Archdiocese of Miami. I think it was around 1950. And then in 1983, they began the work for the construction of this cathedral. The diocese was officially named, taken from the Archdiocese of Miami and from the Diocese of Orlando in 1984. Because of that, when it came time to consecrate this church, it was consecrated as the cathedral in October. In fact, we're celebrating the 35th anniversary. October 6th is the 35th anniversary, and then the diocese formally came into existence on October 24th.
The baptismal font is actually incorporated into the sanctuary of this church. That's atypical, so usually we'll see the baptismal font at the entrance to the church because baptism is one of the sacraments of initiation, but here we see it incorporated into the marble steps surrounding the altar. The sanctuary actually soars to 75 feet, so it's quite a large space, and the pews slope down towards it to encourage this sense of hominess and participation. There's a chapel dedicated to St. Ignatius within the cathedral, and in that chapel there's a crucifix that's quite unusual because Christ is actually bending down with one arm detached from the cross to reach out towards the people who are praying below him, and behind him, etched in the glass, there are the scenes of the Stations of the Cross. There's a monumental statue of Christ in an outdoor shrine attached to the cathedral, and it's Christ risen and displaying his wounds. So his hands are open towards the people who walk by, who visit the cathedral, to welcome them and also show that by these wounds they're healed.
The walls of the cathedral are Florida coral stone. The cathedral has a slope into, you probably experienced it, a slope in terms of the ability to be at a certain level but see the sanctuary area very clearly. But it had a beautiful cathedral. 75 feet is the wall behind us, but there was a great deal of wanting some renovation for the cathedral, great deal when I came here. And so many people told me that, we want you to renovate the cathedral. And that's what we did in a short period of time. Because of the goodness, the generosity of the people, we were able to raise the money and to renovate the cathedral so that the sanctuary has all the marble in it. The mahogany reredos was put up to offer a contrast to the stone. And I think it was in December of 2006 that I had the privilege of reconsecrating the cathedral with the renovation.
The cathedra or chair inside the Cathedral of St. Ignatius represents Bishop Barbarito's role as the chief shepherd and apostle of Palm Beach.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised in Brooklyn, which is a great place. I was born in the year 1950. My parents were American citizens, but all my four grandparents were from Italy. My mother's parents lived in a small town in western Pennsylvania. My dad lived in Brooklyn, New York. They met, got together, and then my mom moved to Brooklyn. And we were a very close-knit Brooklyn-style family. We lived in the Bensonhurst area for most of our stay in Brooklyn. My sister and I sat out on the porch, on the stoop. We played stoop ball, knew the neighbors. It was a great area. Of course, the parish was the place where everybody gathered, and everybody identified themselves in Brooklyn from what parish they were from. I'm from St. Bernadette, which I was from. I'm from St. Teresa. So the parish was actually part and parcel of being part of the Brooklyn family, and that was a great thing. My mom, from a small town in Pennsylvania, so New York was a very different place for her. She came to New York and now is part of an altogether different complexion of population, of the crowds of New York, but she adjusted well. She was, again, just a loving woman. I mean, my mom had a kind word for everyone. Everyone looked to her because of her kindness, her gentleness, and again, a family person. And I have to say that as a young man, I was attracted to being a priest at a young age, and I can't really give you a reason for it. Now, the funny part was, all I wanted to be at that stage in my life, I was in the second grade, was a railroad engineer. Because when we would visit my mom in western Pennsylvania, we were in a rural area, and the Pennsylvania Railroad was up the road, and then down the road was the other part of the Pennsylvania Railroad on the mountains. And I was just fascinated with the trains. And we would take the train every year to get there, and I decided, this is what I want to be. And then one day I decided, no, I don't want to be that, I want to be a priest, and that never left me. I was in the Cathedral High School. Our whole faculty were priests, and I have to say that my inclination to want to be a priest was only confirmed by the great priests that were there. the love for their priesthood, the way they talked to us about their priesthood. So I was very fortunate in that regard.
Bishop Barbarito graduated from Cathedral Prep Seminary in 1967 and completed his seminary training at Cathedral College and Immaculate Conception Seminary. He was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Brooklyn in 1976.
We chose our own date for ordination. I chose January 31st, the feast of St. John Bosco. And my mom was a little concerned, and rightly so, because you're choosing a date in January. What if there's a snowstorm? What if the weather's not good? And I said, oh, don't worry about that. Well, needless to say, the day before the ordination, a huge snowstorm was predicted. And we were making all kinds of plans as to what we are going to do. My only concern was, can the bishop get here? And if he can't get here, how can I get to him? I said, that's all I'm concerned about. Luckily, it turned out to be a beautiful, sunny, very cold day, but a wonderful experience. From my deacon parish, St. Francis of Assisi, I was assigned to St. Helens in Howard Beach. So many things to do. I remember as a young priest, I would go to bed at night, lay on the bed, and exhausted. But it was a happy exhaustion. It wasn't like, oh, it was, I'm tired, but this is great. I just loved it, just loved it. I was in Howard Beach for 5.5 years. I was expecting to stay in Howard Beach for another 3 years because there was a program that was going into effect. And one day I got a phone call from the bishop's secretary that the bishop wanted to see me. And Bishop Magavro, again, fatherly, kind and everything, he told me that he wanted me to work in the chancery. I didn't know what the chancery was that well. I knew I didn't want to do it. I was so happy in the parish, and I told the bishop that I was very grateful for him thinking of me, but that I didn't want to do this. And Bishop Magavro told me that, he says, well, I'm not asking you. He says, I am the bishop under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And we had a wonderful conversation for almost 45 minutes, which was unusual for Bishop Magavro because it was he was generally pretty quick with his appointments. But he was very firm in that I've thought about this, prayed about this, and I want you to do this. I was going to work as assistant chancellor, and I would be there for 1 year, and then I would go away to study canon law. And the bishop said something to me as we were walking out. He was so good. He says, I know I've been mean to you. He says, you can go on the elevator now and curse at me all you want. But what he did tell me was, it made an impression on me. He says, what I consider important are priests. He says, and I want a priest to work with priests. And I found through the years that to be true, that the bulk of the work I did was working with priests, priest calling, with all kinds of situations that came in terms of not only marriages, but other things. And for me, it was a great joy to get to know the priests, to work with them, to do a lot of the work they couldn't do, but I could do because of the canonical training I had and everything. So the bishop turned out to be right.
After years of ministry in his home diocese of Brooklyn, Gerald Barbarito was named an auxiliary bishop of the diocese in 1994. He served as the Bishop of Ogdensburg in upstate New York for several years, and then on July 1, 2003, Bishop Barbarito was named the 5th Bishop of Palm Beach by Pope Benedict XVI, succeeding Sean O'Malley, who had been named Archbishop of Boston that same day.
I was in Brooklyn when the call came because I was up in New York for the province meeting of the bishops, and I got the call that I was assigned to come down to the Diocese of Palm Beach. It was a sudden call, and Bishop O'Malley was assigned here, and he was only here for about 8 months when he was reassigned to Boston at a difficult time. And so I got the call that I was being reassigned to, and I was only 3.5 years in Ogdensburg. I did not want to leave Ogdensburg at all. And so I didn't tell the nuncio that I wasn't going to do what the Pope wanted me to do, but I did express how it just was unfortunate that it's a short period of time, and the people up there are wonderful people, and but there was no negotiating here, and I wasn't trying to negotiate. But the funny part of the conversation was, he says, oh, yes, and you'll be down there tomorrow morning for the announcement. And I says, well, that's going to be very difficult to arrange right now. And he says, oh, yes, but you can do it. So I got on a plane and came down to Palm Beach. Well, I didn't know what to think. I really didn't know what to think because I was not at all familiar with Florida. I'd never been to Florida, wasn't familiar with Florida. The graced part of it was I could honestly say to anyone who asked me a question, I have no idea. And they held a big press conference. And at the press conference, of course, I'm getting barraged with questions about what happened, what's going to happen, and what is your vision for the future And I can honestly say, which I did, I said, yesterday I was a bishop of the Diocese of Palm, didn't even know where Palm Beach, Florida was, barely got a seat on a plane. I have no idea what my vision for the future is going to be. I can honestly say that to you. So it worked out very well that way.
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Barbarito has worked to care for the people of Palm Beach as a true shepherd and apostle.
My motto is living the truth in love. When I had to choose something to be a bishop by, I just always loved that saying from Ephesians. We live the truth, but we live it in love. The bishop has to proclaim the truth, but he has to do that in love. That message has been important in my experience from my earliest days of my priesthood, especially with so many challenges and controversies and misunderstandings within the church. The truth is the truth of Jesus Christ, and we don't change that. We can't compromise that. But we proclaim that in love. So we preach the gospel, we live the gospel in love. So I think those two components are so important. The truth of what we're all about, we do that as the Lord told us. We do that in love. So when I said I want that as my coat of arms. The coat of arms itself, as I said before, the central part of it is the open book, the way it's placed over the bishop at his ordination. That's central. And then under that, I have personal symbols of saints, St. John Bosco and St. Thomas More. And then on the book, I have the symbols from the coat of arms of two bishops, both Bishop Daly and Bishop Magavro, and the skewed cross of John Paul II on the book. And my thinking was they stand upon the book of the gospel. That's their foundation. And now that book of the gospel, that foundation is over me as to how I'm to live and carry out my ministry. So over the years, it's been a matter of getting to know people, getting to know the parishes, getting to know the priests. At this stage, after 16 years, I know them fairly well. And it's a wonderful experience, wonderful experience.